This is not over. It cannot be over. My blade will bathe in the crimson rivers of blood that will pour from the holes I cut into your body.
Hi, this is Simon Candish and welcome to another marvelous video, calling all superhero and serial killer fans, as today we are going to talk about some of the most twisted, evil and straight out psychopaths from the world of comic books. For every variety of heroes in the comic book universes, there is an even greater diversity of villains. There are gimmick-based villains like Reverse Flash and Gorilla Grodd. There are global threats that require all hands on deck to combat. There are villains who seek vengeance, villains who seek power, and villains who seek to make a point. Then there are the bad guys who just want to kill, villains beyond logic and redemption, who have made it their life's purpose to eliminate as many people as possible in order to satisfy their own terrible ambitions. So grab your seat and make sure that all your doors are locked, because today we will be looking at 15 underrated serial killers from the world of comic books. Before we start, I just want to say that this video might not be appropriate for anyone below the age of 15 and is definitely not for the faint-hearted, so watch at your own risk. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, then please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thanks, and let's begin.
Undeniable and apocalyptic.
Billy Kincaid. In the Spawn world, Billy Kincaid is a crazed child murderer and a paedophile. He initially appears in issue 5 of the comic book series when we discover that he is suspected of a savage murder of Amanda Jennings, the 8-year-old daughter of Senator Paul Jennings. Condemned initially to 22 years in jail, his outstanding behavior, brilliant counsel, Jeff Pittman, and a positive psychiatric examination from the Wingate Institution in New York City resulted in early release, allowing him to be free after only 6 years. We eventually learned that the actual number of his kid murders is 27, and all of them were horribly slain. But no substantial proof ever connected him to the atrocities. Al Simmons has been recruited as an assassin to assassinate Kincaid before his death, but he came too late because the cops had just caught him. Following an additional inquiry, Al discovered an old abandoned cabin in Northwest Virginia with the remainder of the dead inside, but soon after, files began to disappear, and the shack suddenly exploded. No cause provided, and all evidence was erased. Despite his excellent behavior, Billy Kincaid returned to the old pastimes after being freed. He invites a 7-year-old Shirley Johnson into his truck to choose her favorite popsicle. He kills her after bringing her back to his house, bringing the death toll to 28. We get a taste of his bizarre behavior when he is seen putting her hair on his head and attaching 9 of her fingers to his wall. Yes, he was crazier than Buffalo Bill. Since he was a human being, he did not have any superpowers, but after dying and becoming a ghost, he could possess anyone and harness souls. This stuff is made of nightmares. Imagine an evil spirit of a child psycho killer. Victor Zsasz. Victor Zsasz is a serial murderer and one of Batman's later adversaries, who was introduced in the 90s in the very first issue of Batman, Shadow of the Bat. Zsasz is a tough murderer to track down, since he has no method other than placing his victims' bodies in lifelike stances and carving a tally mark into his own skin for each homicide. Zsasz is driven by belief that all life is a series of useless agony cycles, and that he is actually rescuing his victims from having to live. Zsasz was the CEO of his own international company, and he had amassed substantial personal wealth in addition to his family's fortune. Unfortunately, his parents died in a boating accident when he was 25, sending him into a deep depression. He went gambling, losing money in international contests. He gradually lost his entire fortune, eventually betting everything he owned against the Penguin in a Gotham City casino. After recognizing that his life was meaningless and driven by desire, he decided to end it. A homeless guy attempted to attack him with a knife, and he was prepared to commit suicide by leaping from Gotham Bridge after he refused to give him money. Mr. Zsasz instinctively grabbed the knife after seeing in the man's eyes that all life was useless and that nothing or no one mattered. He then stabbed the man to death as a thank you for saving his life. He devoted himself from then to liberating people from their meaningless lives. After that, Mr. Zsasz began a tally on his body with a cut on his arm for each of his first victims, which would expand to encompass more than 144 scars. He mainly preys on young ladies, but he has no qualms about murdering anyone. He cuts his victims' throats and leaves them in lifelike postures, each time leaving a tally mark on his body. Zsasz is very nimble and flexible and able to fight one-on-one with even Batman for brief sessions. In addition to his weary yet tall frame, Zsasz is a deadly opponent barehanded because he is locked up in a massive steel confinement unit for 16 hours a day. He has formed a practice of doing isometrics in the small environment to strengthen his physique, though he prefers to cut his victims' throats with knives. And he has no qualms about throwing blades at opponents if the situation calls for it, and he even carries numerous extra knives for this reason. Though he dislikes firearms and considers them untrustworthy, Zsasz is known to carry guns occasionally. He is also very intelligent, making him one of the most formidable criminal masterminds Batman has faced.
Oink, oink, little piggy.
Professor Pig. Laszlo Valentine, or Professor Pig, is one of Batman's most heinous and terrifying adversaries. Pig is a degraded surgeon, fascinated with the tale of Pygmalion and physical perfection. As a result, he kidnaps Gotham residents and transforms them into his obedient Dolotrons in a threatening manner. Professor Pig is also the commander of the Circus of Strange, a gang of meta-human criminals with a circus motif. The origins of Laszlo Valentine remain largely unknown. According to legend, he was a chemist in the secret government organization called Spiral. According to this explanation, he was subject to his own neurotoxic means to mimic Alzheimer's disease. Valentine is now a psychotic with a preoccupation with making people perfect, which he does by changing them into Dolotrons, which is a technique that permanently binds phony doll faces to their own. Laszlo employs cordless drills, hammers, and ice picks, along with doll faces, to transform his victims into Dolotrons. His procedure appears to involve brain surgery or lobotomization and probable gender reassignment. Yikes. Pig also aligned himself with the Circus of the Strange, which included Phosphorus Rex, Siam, Mr. Toad, and Big Top for his crimes. Another creepy fact is that he made his debut as a corpse in Batman issue 666. Double yikes. Pig possesses no extraordinary talents or superpowers, thank God, but he is nonetheless a highly adept surgeon. Madder Red. Madder Red is a villain who turns into the protagonist of the comic book series Bedlam, published by Marvel Comics. Fillmore Press was formerly a supervillain known as Madder Red who caused mayhem and murder in the city of Bedlam, while warring with his arch-enemy, the First. Other atrocities he committed including kidnapping, beheading 2 religious dignitaries, and displaying their heads through a mob. He was apprehended during one last attack on an opera theatre. During that time, he told police that he had hidden bombs in children's toys across town. He said that if the locals wanted to stop the explosions, they needed to kill him. Soon, a group of unknown physicians invaded the station and kidnapped him. Madder Red was subjected to invasive neurosurgery while under the care of the good doctor in order to cure any physiological abnormalities in his brain, while also making him more susceptible to suggestions. They healed him of his ambition to be a villain and homicidal inclinations after years of treatment and therapy. Later, under the guise of Fillmore, he engages in an investigation of serial killings, wishing to assist the police by relying on his expertise as a murderer to discover the perpetrators. Since then, he has been supporting Bedlam police as a consultant and has apprehended scores of murderers in a matter of weeks. Madder Red was formerly an unrepentant serial murderer and criminal. He committed the most terrible and heinous violent killings without regard for age, gender, or color. While he had no preference for victims, he seemed to like killing youngsters the most. He also felt that everyone was a monster because of desire, and that, given the right motivation, anyone could do anything if they wanted it hard enough. Madder Red was bright and crafty, having exceptional insights into the human psyche while being unstoppable and reckless. Onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia is mainly the Green Arrow's adversary. He appears first in Green Arrow issue 12, which was released in 2002. He is a serial murderer who preys on non-powered vigilante superheroes, and he got his nickname because he mimics noises around him. Onomatopoeia initially appears when he murders Virago, a female crime fighter. Later, he shoots at Connor Hawke, the second Green Arrow, who was saved by his father, the first and original Green Arrow, Oliver Queen. While Connor was in the hospital for surgery, Onomatopoeia returned to do the job. He killed numerous physicians in the operating area, and although Queen and Black Canary stopped him from killing Connor, he managed to flee. Once, Onomatopoeia released the Joker from Arkham Asylum and provided him with funds to wage a gang war against Max's use. He eventually ran into Batman, who beat him. However, he avoided arrest by critically injuring the Joker, leaving Batman to choose between preserving the Joker's life and catching his new adversary. Onomatopoeia lives a hidden, seemingly regular existence as a loving spouse and father of 2 children, who are oblivious to his murdering acts. He justifies his periodic ailments as a result of sports like hunting, polo, and tennis. He preserves souvenirs of his conquest in a hidden shrine under a bookshelf, saving 2 for Green Arrow and Batman. Onomatopoeia is an extremely clever martial artist, athlete, and weapons specialist. He always carries a sniper rifle, 2 semi-automatic handguns, and an army knife with him. He usually wears black gloves, slacks, and a shirt, with a long black trench coat and a large black hood, ornamented with concentric white rings. It is unknown if Onomatopoeia is a metahuman. Nevertheless, the Green Arrow has noticed that he is strengthened in some way because he's resilient enough to survive direct blasts and flames that would kill normal humans. Butcher of Buckaroo. The Butcher of Buckaroo, or the Butcher in Black, is a serial killer who appears in the horror comic book series Nailbiter, published by Image Comics. We had to put one from Nailbiter as the entire series is about serial killers only. When the series begins, the community of Buckaroo in Oregon has given home to 16 of the world's most deadly serial murderers. Number 17 was the Butcher himself. The Butcher is the series' major evil, terrifying menace. He's a silent stalker who appears out of nowhere wearing a frightening helmet. In addition, his position as the master's right-hand man makes him a cold, calculated murder machine. The murder store was set on fire one day while Nicholas Finch and Sharon Crane were investigating. They broke in to discover the Butcher of Buckaroo dressed as a Minotaur and Raleigh decapitated. While escaping, the Butcher shoved a bookcase onto them, trapping them beneath. Later, FBI agent Abigail Barker was abducted and imprisoned in caves under Buckaroo. She noticed Butcher enter with his Butcher Man master. As Barker stood there like a deer caught in the headlights, they removed another individual from a cage and began slicing him into little bits. He doesn't seem to have any sort of superhuman abilities apart from his Minotaur-like body armor and helmet, but it is clear that the entire group of butchers in Buckaroo are all mentally twisted. Guess it's better to be a vegetarian if you're living in the fictional city of Buckaroo, Oregon. Well, no offense to those people residing in Oregon or vegetarians. Romat-Ru. Romat-Ru is a Sinestro Corps member who initially appeared in Green Lantern, Sinestro Corps Special Issue 1 in 2007. Romat-Ru is Zudar's most heinous serial murderer, responsible for killing thousands of children. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, but he was recruited by a Yellow Lantern Corps and ended up joining the Sinestro Corps during his transit to jail. When Sinestro was caught and the Anti-Monitor was murdered, Romat-Ru left the war on Earth. After a few months, Romat-Ru joined a gang of Sinestro supporters who attempted to liberate Sinestro while he was being sent to Karuga for death. The Sinestro Corps assaulted the Green Lanterns, accompanying Sinestro, but were attacked in turn by Atrocitus. Romat-Ru rejoined with the other survivors and led another successful rescue on Yusmalt. When Romat-Ru and Tekik returned to Quad, they gave Sinestro an update on the Corps' recent happenings, including the Zamarron's capture of numerous female Sinestro Corps members and Mongol's 2's attempts to seize Sinestro. Despite his desire to see Mongols suffer, Romat-Ru obeyed Sinestro's instructions to save the female Sinestro Corps members and reassemble on Daxam's moon, while Sinestro looked into a personal problem. Following Sinestro's apparent death, the Green Lanterns were dispatched to pick up members of the Sinestro Corps at large in Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps issue 24. Tamar 2, Romat-Ru's Green Lantern counterpart, chased him, and with the slain children of Zudar still vivid in his memory, broke the Green Lantern protocol utterly by murdering him on the spot. Romat-Ru wears the Quadian power ring, which grants him Sinestro-like abilities, things like flight, invincibility, mind control, and so on. But he possessed something that the other members of Sinestro Corps lacked, his ability to terrify because of his large body count. Acid Angel. Since we are halfway to the end of this video, it's time to get a little bizarre. Acid Angel, also known as Angela Cicero, was a slasher murderer who appeared in Devil's Due Publishing small one-shot comic book Slice Heart Prelude, which was released in 2006. Angela Cicero was a real estate agent with a boisterous social life. She had the appearance, the money, and the aptitude to party every night of the week in a new club and a new man to leave behind. Angela had a married friend named Michelle, whom she had known since her childhood. Despite Michelle's confidence, Angela and Michelle's husband were engaged in a scandalous affair. Michelle was devastated when she learnt this and committed suicide by cutting her wrist in the bathtub. Michelle's husband, filled with sadness and resentment towards himself, substituted hydrochloric acid for Angela's insulin. Angela was murdered by the injection, but she rose from the dead, determined to continue her life and punish men. As the Acid Angel, Angela utilized her talents to punish men by enticing them home and murdering them. As a result of the manner in which she was murdered, she emitted acid when sexually aroused. She was kidnapped by a cosmetics company named Cutotech. The business was capturing slashers in order to develop an anti-aging compound. XO eventually murdered her by severing her head with garden shears, but that didn't stop her, as she was further resurrected twice by Black Lamp Society for their evil operations. The Hangman or the Holiday Killer. One of the most persistent cases in Batman's early years was that of a serial murderer who exclusively struck on holidays, taking a new victim every month. At first, it was thought that the killer was Alberto Falcone, the decent son of renowned Falcone criminal family, who gets apprehended after 13 months on the run. The killings, however, do not end once Alberto is sent to Arkham. Falcone's incarceration midi gives rise to the Hangman, a new serial killer dubbed for the propensity to kill law enforcement agents and hang them by the neck. The Hangman was actually Sophia Falcone, Alberto's sister, who had organized the whole thing in order to accuse District Attorney Harvey Dent for ruining her family. Sophia Falcone was the daughter of Mafia Don Carmine Falcone before she became the Hangman, a serial murderer who killed cops at every festival throughout the year, leaving behind a replica of the children's word game Hangman, with crucial letters missing spelled in blood on each new victim. The numerous victims of Sophia were all law enforcement agency affiliated, some straight, some crooked, and they all had a role in Harvey Dent being appointed district attorney in some fashion. She was allegedly restrained by a wheelchair and a head brace. Sophia could not travel anywhere without the assistance of her bodyguard, Angelo Murti, but she learned to walk and kept it a secret from everyone. Apart from being a serial killer, she was a great tactician and a leader with underworld connections. She was also a decent fighter and marksman. Abattoir or Edgar. Another Batman villain, Arnold Hutchinson, is a serial murderer who grew up believing that his family was wicked. As a result, he finally murdered them, believing that their murders would safeguard the world from future dangers. Hutchinson also claimed that once each victim died, he absorbed their life power. One of DC's comics' most heinous serial killers, Arnold spent his life as Edgar after being compelled to adopt a new identity. He was tried and convicted of murdering 19 people during a killing spree. Edgar is unpredictable and has defeated Azrael and Batman in close-quarter fighting, despite having no formal training. He is constantly high on adrenaline, which keeps him alert and challenging to ambush. He was caught and sent to Arkham Asylum. He escaped multiple times but was always apprehended by Batman. The final time he fled was when Bane released all the convicts free in the Nightfall storyline, and he went on to murder several more people. He was eventually apprehended by John Paul Valley, who was portraying Batman at the time. Valley pursued him inside a refinery, almost knocking him into a pool of molten metal. Abattoir was dangling from a chain overhead, just hanging on, but Valley let him fall to his death. Abattoir reappeared as a ghost to harass Bruce Wayne, the original Batman, using Valley's Batman armor, but Batman proved far more resistant to psychological attack than his replacement. Batman duped Abattoir's spirit into giving up the armor and his purpose. Boy, I wish we could be as cool as Bruce. His arsenal only consisted of different types of bladed weapons. The Sin Eater. Sin Eater refers to a group of fictional characters featured in Spider-Man and Ghost Rider comic books published by Marvel Comics. The original Sin Eater was Stanley Carter, who was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent working in research and development. His parents were drug addicts who fell in love with each other. Stanley's father died afterwards, leaving his pregnant mother alone. Stanley's mother was sent to rehab, and she was reared by his grandparents in the Ozark Mountains. Stanley's granddad was a fervent pastor who despised his son and vented his rage on Stanley. After Stanley's grandpa died from a rattler bite, his congregation performed a sin-eating ceremony in his honor, and young Stanley apparently witnessed a sin-eater, a disguised hermit who would eat fruit put in a corpse's body to absorb the dead sins. Stanley identified with the sin-eater because he believed he bore the burden of his father's misdeeds. As a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, he was given experimental medications to boost his strength and endurance, but the program was cancelled when it was deemed too risky. Carter got aggressive and resigned from S.H.I.E.L.D., ultimately becoming a detective with the NYPD. Following the murder of his partner by a gang of teenage criminals, he became obsessed with murdering anybody who sinned by misusing power. He bought a shotgun and some clothing to make a costume and went by the name Sin Eater. He does commit suicide in the end, but as usual, he was resurrected during the Sinister War storyline. He possessed an artificially enhanced physique comparable to Captain America, though his agility, strength, reflexes, and stamina were higher than those of any Olympic competitor. They did not transcend the human body's postulated inherent limitations and would not be deeming really superhuman. He had also had military training, however, it had been rendered ineffective due to his lunacy. He is also adept in hand-to-hand fighting and is a brilliant marksman, using a double-barreled shotgun as his hallmark weapon. When Kindred resurrected Sin Eater, he held a unique rifle that took away any superhuman powers and eradicated their sins. He can also transform sins into actual monsters, also teleport and absorb the abilities of whoever he shoots. Murmur. Michael Christian Amar, sometimes called Murmur, is a bad guy from the DC Comics universe. Dr. Michael Christian Amar, a renowned surgeon, struggled with schizophrenia untreated. He goes on a murdering rampage, severing the tongues of his victims in an effort to silence everyone around him after becoming insane due to the voices in his brain. Due to Barry Allen's persuasive testimony and his overwhelming desire to confess, he was apprehended by Fred Chiry and Joe Jackham and was condemned to death. He makes his debut in The Flash, Ironhide Issue 1. The adversaries in The Flash are among the most diverse you'll discover in the DC universe. Each one presents an exciting new super science puzzle for Flash to tackle using his adaptable super speed abilities. Michael Amar is not one of those. He lacks super speed, mind control helmets, or ice cannons. He only possesses a peculiar blood type, a solid foundation in biochemistry and the medical sciences, and a severe case of schizophrenia. Amar started murdering people all around Central and Keystone City. Amar's own unusual blood mutilation rendered a fatal injection useless. Thus, not even a court-ordered death sentence could put an end to his misery. Amar chopped out his own tongue and sewed his lips shut in an attempt to stop the voices inside his head once more, acquiring the nickname Murmur for the monotonous, barely audible noises he would continue to produce. Murmur keeps killing guards and captives equally as he is imprisoned in Iron Heights. Though the degree of his immunity to many toxins and viruses is unknown, Murmur has a peculiar blood chemistry. He was a talented surgeon in the past and is quite educated. He has converted his proficiency with knives into deadly effectiveness. Birthday Boy. Ray Salinger was a Gotham-based serial murderer. He worked for Mayor Cobblepot as Birthday Boy, eliminating political targets and threats. He was the first costume criminal Batman faced in his crime-fighting career. He's a physically fit young man in his late 20s or early 30s. After killing his first victim, a 15-year-old girl named Amanda Grant, he became obsessed with young females around the age of 15 or so. Any girl who looked like her and was her age would be abducted by Birthday Boy and forced to participate in a birthday celebration. Ray Salinger would take the girls to the basement after they made a wish and savagely murder them before throwing their bodies among the mound of remains of his previous victims. When in killer mode, he wears a burlap bag with small holes cut out for his eyes to see and a birthday party hat on his head. Salinger has been withheld at the Crane Institute but escaped repeatedly. By Batman's first days on the job, Mayor Oswald Cobblepot had hired the Birthday Boy to assassinate numerous foes. In exchange, he was frequently handed street hookers or penguin foes. Salinger also had taken up home at the abandoned Arkham Manor, with the lower floors utilized to conceal the dead bodies of his victims. Eventually, he's defeated by the Batman and is arrested. Cornelius Stirk. Cornelius Stirk is a cannibalistic serial murderer and Batman's advisory. He's a quirky metahuman with the mysterious ability to alter how people see him, allowing him to transform into either a delightful or a terrifying character. This skill comes at a high cost though, as it necessitates the production of norepinephrine, a hormone found only in human hearts, which is why he murders people for a career. His method of operation is luring away Gotham's homeless to torment them with his dread powers and change their hearts into a soup that he believes fuels his strength. Sounds a bit weird, right? Well, wait for the weirder origin story then. Cornelius viciously murdered one of his own friends in high school. Recognizing his mental instability, the authorities confined him to Arkham Asylum. Stirk managed to avoid counseling and even murdered a doctor. He snatched the doctor's heart from his chest and devoured it as it was still beating. Cornelius thus got a taste for human hearts. Stirk gets discharged from Arkham Asylum in his first appearance, most likely due to his use of psychic skills on his physicians. He then discontinues his medicine and begins his descent into mass killing. Stirk preyed on Gotham's destitute before being apprehended by Batman and imprisoned in Arkham Asylum. Cornelius Stirk was one of the convicts unleashed on Batman while incarcerated at Arkham Asylum in Jeremiah Arkham's punishment room for the Dark Knight. Stirk and the other criminals were beaten by Batman and most likely returned to their prisons. During the Batman Nightfall storyline, Stirk collaborates with the Joker to capture Commissioner Gordon. To the chagrin of the Joker, he prefers to murder Gordon rather than capture him. As Stirk tries to murder Gordon with a knife, Gordon has a hallucination that Stirk is Batman. Stirk is stopped by Batman, but Gordon continues to scream in terror due to his hallucination. To apprehend Stirk, Batman is forced to abandon a horrified Gordon with his wife, who transports him to a hospital. Stirk appeared in Kevin Smith's Batman, The Widening Gaia Narrative, released in 2009. Jane Doe. Jane Doe is a DC Comics supervillain and Batman's adversary. She's a serial killer who kills people and steals their identities until she gets bored with the one that she's presently using. Jane Doe's identity and origins are unknown. She's a psychotic female with no skin and bare muscular tendons all over her body. Jane used to murder people in Gotham City before being apprehended and confined to the Elizabeth Arkham Asylum. She's a fantastic impersonator. She observes the behaviors and habits of the individuals in front of her before making her move. Like we already said, she murders her prey and then assumes their identities, thereby becoming that person quite literally. She may even mentally manipulate herself into believing that she is that person. Being a pathological liar, Jane can travel anywhere she wants to go as long as she's had enough information on someone with adequate access. She then promptly kills that target, assumes that person's identity, and begins an entirely new chapter. Jane can even learn martial arts by studying her opponents, making her a difficult opponent to defeat. Jane Doe has been seen carrying a variety of products. She carries a tape recorder to assist her in mimicking voices, in addition to the equipment of whoever she's adopting the identity of. She nearly fled Arkham Asylum with a stash of body parts she had hidden in various locations. She effortlessly obtained Dr. Ann Carver's severed eyeball and hand in a jar and a voice asking not to murder her on a tape recorder, as the emergency escape needed a fingerprint scan, a retinal scan, and a voice ID. Pretty smart, right? In terms of weapons, Doe had been observed using conventional and handy weaponry, either a knife or a handgun, whichever is necessary to complete the task. Marvelous verdict. That brings us to the end of the video, and it's evident that most of the psychopaths come out of the pages of Batman, since the nocturnal detective himself is a huge sociopath, and he lives in Gotham City, which is perfect home ground for lowlives and killers. I hope none of you watch this at night. If you enjoyed the video, click on the like button and let us know in the comments whether you want a part 2 or not. Also, let us know which character was the scariest according to you. So, sleep tight and don't let the bedbugs bite or a nasty serial killer bite. We'll see you in the next one.